Would you do us all a favor and introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Rick Fisher, and my sister Barbara Levine, and we put on this gallery exhibit here at the Soho Gallery for my dad, Bob Fisher, who was a member in the 70s and 80s, and this is in honor of his 90th year. This is a retrospective of his work over his lifetime. I remember helping my dad build his darkroom in the very early 70s in our house in Queens. And he was an industrial designer, graphic designer by trade. He worked for CBS Toys, directing their package design division. But his heart was a fine artist. He did photography. He was trained at Pratt Institute. So when he got his camera, I remember he had an early Hasselblad, an early Leica. We'd go out on the weekends and capture images of New York City. He'd take the train into Manhattan and focus on street scenes, pedestrians, images. He loved the graphic design piece. And from there, he started doing graphic constructions of images using his graphic design sense. So in this room here, these are all images that he took of pedestrians walking on the streets of New York. And his theme was to show the disconnect between the pedestrian and the environment that the pedestrian was in. So if you look at each scene, you'll see a pedestrian walking in front of a graphically strong image. It could be a straight scene, it could be a window, it could be a poster. And it took him a few years to develop a portfolio of images. And then in the darkroom, after he printed them, he would cut, paste, and create three-dimensional designs at different levels within the picture using his package design background. Back in the 70s, to do a package design, his department would actually create a mock-up out of cardboard of a package. So that was his milieu. So these images in this room really talk about what the pedestrian was feeling and thinking, and how that's disconnected to the image that she was in front. This is the only one that he really did as a portrait. You'll find that most of his photographs in the exhibit don't focus on individual portraits. So for those folks who are interested in the human aspect, they all have a human aspect, but some have more of a graphic interpretation. And my dad had a lot of humor too. This image right here, I think, is brilliant. He captured the graffiti, "Worship the Goddess." We got the nasty habits from a 70s Broadway show. And by manipulating it with the drinking, it kind of works. And every time I see it, I see something else in it. Here we have an old man looking his age. He's hunched, and you see the wear and tear of the paint chipping away. He's in front of the old men's room sign, and when you look at it all, it kind of really tells the story of aging in the city. So each of these images has a story. On the other side, can we just continue?
Sure.
On this side, he took photos of folks during the summer at Jones Beach, and he took just endless images of folks that he thought had interesting facial features, designs, movements, capturing a moment. He liked the interplay of shadow and light, and he loved to see the surf as something in motion against the static of a moment. And then he would do the same thing over a 2 or 3 year period. He would print these images and then play around with constructions. So these folks may have been filmed at a different time entirely than the beach scene and the lady, and he would manipulate them and put them out to create a graphically strong image. He did this, and this was his original Summer Sands 1 exhibit that was here back in the early 80s.
And it was delicious.
I'm having a lot of fun. I just harvested.
Look at the detail in here. All these layers.
Big buckets. So what you do is you put them on the screen, you put them dry for 3 minutes, and then you compress them down, you suck the air out of the oil, and just press in the air. And I waited after I was done before.
But what?
It's like marijuana. You can grow it to this part of his work. Again, my dad was interested in the disconnect between folks walking through New York City and the graphically strong images of the manhole covers and streets that people actually walked on. So looking at a manhole cover really takes a graphic artist to see the strength of the design. And he took a lot of pride in the darkroom techniques of these pictures because they're meticulous, and that's kind of one of his strengths, combining the abstract ideas. This could be a Mondrian painting, this one, if you look at it from a pure design point of view. And he captured the textures, the contrasts. Each of these, I think, is strong in a different way. So this was his final play, really, with developing. 1984, he moved from Queens to Manhattan. He couldn't have a darkroom anymore due to space, so he switched to doing graphic design and constructions using Photoshop and the computer. So these are non-camera constructions. These are color graphics that he created. But again, you can get that same sense of his design piece. There's a few over here that are interesting because he used hand tinting, hand dyeing as a transition from black and white photography to color. So these are pictures that he hand dyed. So coming over here, you can see his most recent work was done in the last 5 to 10 years. Again, these are digital images he found that he manipulated online. It's interesting, my dad illustrated a book in the early 40s about a puppy. My Little Puppy was called. And his illustrations by hand had this same style. What I find so interesting is there's something about the expression of art that comes from the artist, and you could just change the modality, the media, and there's something about the artist that comes through even though these are not even women that he drew. These are digital images he manipulated. And here he did 2 themes. One theme was he started with an idea and tried to create an image to illustrate that message, and some that are not labeled are just purely abstractions that worked for him, that he liked. And this is his work.
Fantastic. This is much, I have to tell you, this is much bigger of a body of work than I expected for you to bring down. It is much more modern than I expected, given how old those first images are.
Yes.
And the fact that they were hanging here 35 years ago, or whatever it was.
Yes.
Just for the sake of the folks who are most involved with the gallery, can you give us your recollections of what he did here for the gallery?
Yes, he was involved in building the stairs and the loft area. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you still have it. He donated his enlarger when he moved in the mid-'80s. I don't know what happened to that, but he said, I wonder if it's up there somewhere. I said, Dad, I don't think so. People don't necessarily do that anymore. But he has a feeling in his heart for this place. My dad, it was not one for self-promotion, and whether it was in his business life or in his art life, he did this as a very introspective way. But he liked critical feedback. He loved the fact that this gallery was a safe place for him to share his work, get critical feedback, be part of an art community. And he loves that. He's still doing that now on the Upper West Side with his community group that he's part of. Mm-hmm. But this was really important for him, and I know that because he talked about it a lot. And when his show was here, my sister and I, as much younger young adults, came and helped him set up, and we were part of that model, so we feel good about being here. And another interesting moment was on Friday when it was just my sister and I and our kids and my father hanging everything. This was the first time in 40 years he saw his work in sequence. And he had to make some decisions about how would he like it displayed, what represents his idea. And some of the pictures that I thought were my favorites, he threw out. He says, no, I'm not happy with that. Wow. I said, what are you not happy about? And he started explaining it. It was not a visible thing in many cases. It was like I wasn't happy with how I felt when I took this picture. The darkroom technique here is not up to my standards. I don't want to show it. Mm-hmm. And I think again, that's his pride, his perfectionism. So that's kind of what he would say. And I asked him what his favorites were, and he couldn't answer that very much because he would pick an aspect of one that said, well, I had to work 3 days on getting this image perfectly developed. And this other one was, I love the way this color and that color met here, and it's a moment. And he says, that manhole cover, I was in the middle of 48th Street, and I almost got killed because a cab was running me over, and I'm sitting there trying to get the right image of this manhole cover with the light, the right exposure. So I think what's in the eye of an artist and what's in their head is not always visible and translates to their art. But spending this weekend with Dad gave me a chance to hear his story, and that was a phenomenal thing.
I'm so sorry I couldn't get to meet him myself.
Yeah, he just left a few minutes ago, but when you're 90, you're allowed to leave early.
Yes, exactly. I'd say so as well. I want to thank you for this. I have to ask you a question that I would ask him. You probably don't know the answer, but so in case you don't know, I've been a member here since approximately a few months after he left.
Yeah.
And I'd never heard his name. It never came up. I never saw this. It never, And so when you first contacted us, and I was like, wow, really? Wow.
Yeah.
We've always wondered about that. This, that, the other thing. Why do you think he was not in touch with us again after he left?
Mid-'80s, my mom passed away. My dad sold her home, closed up his darkroom, moved to West End Avenue, small apartment, didn't have room for that. And he remarried shortly after. And I think the taking of photography, the use of photography became served a different role in his life here living in Manhattan. I think in Queens he still found a time and a place in his home and in his weekends to create photography and do this sort of work. When he moved to Manhattan, he became part of the Manhattan scene, and he didn't have his darkroom. Photography took a step back. So he took a step back from it. But his heart is obviously still with us, because you would not believe how excited he was by this and how moved he was just to be sitting in this room at the end of Friday seeing his life's work honored this way. And I can't tell you how much it means that you came today to see it, because it's the next step in the circle. You're seeing it now. You have the story to tell to others at some point. And my dad would be happy to come down sometime if you ever want to meet him, because he's just a taxi cab away. If you ever want to, just let me know. I can hook you guys up.
Absolutely. I want to thank you so much.
You're welcome.
This is way beyond anything I could have expected. You weren't doing this for us, you were doing this for him.
Absolutely.
And really, he did it for us. And I hope I'm going to be making a video. I'm going to be putting it on YouTube. Is that okay with you?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. And I'm sure that everybody else involved here is going to be...
This is my sister, who's actually came up with this idea.
Okay. Why don't you step into the light and so we can say hello to you? We got more or less the whole story, but since you're here now, what can you add? I know you don't know what he said, your brother said, but I essentially got the whole scope of the timing, of the sequence of these. Well, actually, maybe I should just ask the same question again. Is
Please,
yeah. So I have a question that I probably would have asked him. You may not know the full answer. I already asked it here. But after all these years, I've been a member here since, I believe, just a few months after he left. Never heard of him. Never knew anything about him. Why did he never come back?
I believe it was when Mommy died. Our mother passed away. He stopped taking photographs after that.
Okay, so
It's just, and he moved on to other things. Much of it digital. He fell in love with the computer. He fell in love with the images he can do digitally, and how much transformation he can give to an image so instantly. So he really fell in love with that. Yeah.
fantastic.
And I think also the physical move from Queens to Manhattan, his life changed.
He gave up his darkroom by moving into the city. What he loved most about his pictures were the people. As a photographer, if you want to talk about photography as his art, at the time he was taking pictures, it was getting to know the people he was filming. was shooting and getting to know their stories and bringing their stories out in their picture, whether it was doing it three-dimensionally or repeating them, or somehow he brought their story out in the way he constructed those 3D pieces. So.
Fantastic.
And we want to thank you again for just the use of this gallery for this weekend. It's been awesome.
Thank you. Future impact. Contemplation. Interaction. Incarnation. Attraction. Interception. Untitled. Convergence. Untitled.